Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. I'm Jack, and I am delighted to be here with my great friend Daniel. Hey, Daniel.
Howdy, Jack. I truly am delighted to be with you as well. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining me.
thank you. Yeah, it's always a joy. I really, I look forward to Tuesdays. You know, when it's like Tuesdays are such, in terms of the work week, Tuesday's kind of a bummer, right?
Yep,
Because
it's
it's
true.
like Wednesdays, you got it. You're like you're halfway there, but Tuesdays are like,
It's
it's
like
really just starting.
yeah, it's sort of like Tuesdays are sort of like Sisyphus getting to the top of the mountain with the rock, right? And
Yeah.
Wednesdays like right at the top, and Thursdays rolling back down over you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I feel like with this, it's like Tuesday becomes kind of a joyous occasion for me.
At least Tuesday evenings.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, Janet, I'd love to hear how your week's gone since last week. What's been going on for you in your practice?
It's kind of a continuation, actually. There's been sort of a balancing out happening, which is really fun to watch. My practice is good. It's on point, regular, all that stuff. I did notice though some more of that sort of like, I don't know, wanting to like, I don't know, try like prove something or I don't know what it was, but sort of like pushing kind of hard on myself a bit. And then I noticed that people around me were getting sick, like colds, and I was like, oh man, it's been a while since I've had any kind of a bug, and so I was like, I kind of noticed that I was tired, like physically tired, and sort of mentally not there. Like I'd sit down to meditate, like a couple of times. This is just on one day that I sat down a few times to meditate, and I just made it just several minutes before I was like, oh, it's not happening, right? Like this isn't a good idea. And then I just got super hydrated and went to bed early. Woke up the next day and I was feeling light and easy and everything was fine, hunky dory, you know. And
Nice.
then in my actual, you know, in my practice, I've noticed sort of a similar thing where, you know, like I don't know, I sometimes bring quite a lot of expectation to my practice about like, I don't know, doing something. I don't know what I'm, you know, I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. And then I noticed actually a real relax today, especially this morning. I noticed this real deep, like kind of body awareness that, you know, like it just everything kind of just like calmed down and like sunk down and like I just mellowed out, right? Like my usual sort of high energy just sort of mellowed out a bit. And it was really easygoing and joyful.
Hmm. That's really nice to hear. So when you kind of dropped that expectation mindset, things were able to flow a little bit easier.
Yeah, you know what it was? It was something, what happened was this little thought occurred to me, just like happened where like, you know, it's been said countless times, like meditation isn't a chore. It's not something that like, you have
Mm.
to do, right? It should be joy. It should be something that I want to do, you know? And
Mm.
so then I was like, well, what would make me really like want to do this and not view it as a chore? What would make it that way for me? And then I was like, well, if I got to just sit and just, you know, be here, like I know that's what we're doing, but like if I could just really just relax and just be here, that would be
Mm.
nice. And so I did that. And that's what I did. I was just being here and being very present, but not a conceptual presentness, not a like, oh, I'm coming back to the present moment. Nothing like that. It wasn't like a workout. It was like a real
Yeah.
sort of just like, like letting go of all of that, even just sort of like, nah, here I am. It's good.
Yeah. Oh, I love that feeling of where it's uh you're not putting in as much effort, right? And yet
No,
and that's what it is. It's like that whole idea that Lamas talked about, that we're training to become natural, that we have to put on all this effort and training to come to those moments where we can be somewhat effortless.
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
experience the moment. Yeah, yeah.
And it's not a it's interesting because it's not a conceptual presence.
Right.
That's the thing that hit me, especially this morning, you know. I was like, it's not a it's not something that I'm constructing, right? Like there's times where it feels that way. That's high energy. That's a lot of effort into sort of constructing some type of artificial presence, right? Being present with what is includes being like, oh, like here, you know, like whatever, here I am, here's my, you know, normal tendencies and all that. And I'm just gonna like just be here with it and just see that. It is a lot easier, it's a lot simpler, but it's a hard road to hoe to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think yeah, um you have to conceptualize it first, because um something else Lama was saying this weekend was, we have to start from a place of learning and hearing the truth, and it's gonna knock around in our heads. It has to, because we're conceptual beings, and so we have to go through that kind of the stages of learning and thinking intellectually around something, in order to get to a more that more open awareness place.
Ain't that the truth? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I just want to take a
Oh,
second. I didn't get to see, be present for the talk this weekend. But I just wanted to point out that all of the Lions Roar Dharma talks are on YouTube. And so it's really nice for me. I'm so grateful to, you know, to our Sangha member, Dan, who handles the YouTube channel, because when I can't make it, I'm always sort of eager, right, to hear like what was it, what got said, or, you know, what transpired here, and it's really nice. I
yeah.
just noticed that Lama's talk from Sunday was posted today, so probably tomorrow I'll give it a listen. I'm sure there'll be some gems in there.
Nice. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it was a great talk. Um, yeah, and I guess that has been feeding into my practice and training and whatnot. But I definitely noticed after our talk last week, I was still thinking a lot about shamatha and my experience with shamatha. And I was noticing how I really rely on the book Calming the Mind by Genlam Rinpa.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I shared last week. Oh, are you gonna show Calming the Mind?
It was, yeah. So
Yeah, 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 grab it.
you said last week that you were gonna make a point
I
about how to
did.
use this. There you
Yeah, please,
go.
if you don't have this book, look it up. I really, Lama recommends it, for anyone who's starting out with shamatha. But what I was reminded about, because I pick it up pretty much every time before I do a single pointed style meditation. I'll pick it up and read even just like 2 paragraphs. I don't read a ton, but it kind of helps me just remind me of some of the basic points and whatnot. And one thing that's really important to know when you're reading that book is that, he's teaching students who are going to be going into a year-long retreat. Some of them are 3 months, some of them are 6, some are a whole year. And so some of the instructions are a little bit different, maybe than what lay people or householders might be doing. But like the thing in its whole is just incredibly crucial reading for shamatha. But one thing I noticed that I mentioned last week was that um, if I notice myself being extremely distracted in a sit where it's like, oh man, this is I can barely stay on my my object for a moment. Um, is that maybe I'll take a break or do something else. And that's actually a suggestion from Calming the Mind is, that's not really a good place to be in when you're trying to cultivate shamatha. But I was also thinking about how Lama has also advised me when I'm in that state of mind that just kind of just observe it, and yes, that means coming back every half second sometimes, and so I think there's a way that like I'm I'm learning how to find my approach, um And when what I think is most important is listening to Lama, because he knows me personally. And so, the meditation texts that we get, they're general, right? Because we're learning about the general practice, but then we have to take those instructions to our teacher and say, how can you refine this with me to, based on your understanding of me? And so, yeah, if you have a personal teacher, that's like, that it's just, that's what we have to do in our training, is like, okay, I learned some of like the general techniques. Can you help me hone this? So I've been working on that kind of technique of just like, yeah, my mind is crazy right now. How about I just kind of like look at what that's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because in some ways it's doing what you were doing, where it's like just looking at this natural state. It's, I'm not forcing it away. I'm, not necessarily engaging with it or trying not to. So it's just this kind of way that my mind is presenting itself in the
Yeah.
moment. So go ahead and like take a look. And so that's been interesting.
What do you notice, Jack? So I take it this is what you've been sort of focusing on in the at least last week or so, right?
Yeah.
So what do you notice when you do that, when you practice just sort of looking at the chaotic thoughts that are running through your head?
Sometimes it's kind of sweet. I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of sweet. It's just like, oh, this is my mind. My
Yeah.
mind is wacky right now. Aw. You know? And there can be a little bit of compassion there, right? Because I think sometimes when I'm like um thinking that I need to have some sort of rigid, that I have an expectation that there's a way that I should be in meditation.
Yeah.
And so then I'll be kind of mad at myself for not being there. Um, and so when I actually just kind of look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that's my mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It becomes a lot more bearable, It doesn't
Yeah.
become so domineering, so dominating, right? It's not Lama oftentimes, I always associate this sort of visual of him, putting the hand really close to the eyes, right? And then just pushing the hand away just a little bit, just so you can get a little bit more vision. And once you get the hand out here, all of a sudden, like everything opens up, right? And
Yeah.
it's not that it's gone, right? Like it's not that the thoughts disappear somehow and you go to some kind of a neutral state, but rather that it becomes more manageable and doesn't become all encompassing.
Right. Right. And it doesn't become permanent, right? Because I think that's where I get is I think like I am a distracted person. That's where I'll go,
Mm,
is I'll concretize it. I'll make it
yeah.
permanent, which is my tendency anyways, right? Or all of us. And yes, I mean, there's the whole thing again, is it concretizing it. So like I was doing it again just there, like I am a distracted person. And it's so funny. um but yeah, so kind of looking at that a little bit too. I've been working with that, before and after my sits, is like just kind of checking in with what did I try and make solid during my sit, and feeling like the distraction is permanent, or the bliss is permanent, or any
That's
of
a
it.
dangerous one.
Yeah, because then we're chasing the dragon.
Yeah, it
you
is.
know
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, when we have that really, like, the meditation that just feels good, and it's like, oh, I felt like just in union with everything around me. It was perfect. And then the next time, it's not like that at all.
Nope.
And it's just like, just chasing that feeling.
Right. Yeah. Then that's where you begin to have those sort of concepts about how it should be and what it's supposed to
Yeah,
be like. And then you begin to sort of try to make it happen. And boy,
right.
that's sort of going the wrong direction.
It is. Yeah. Well, in that way, it becomes like a drug. It's about like getting high,
Yeah.
and experiencing that high again, that, it's going to be different every time. So yeah, there's going to be times that feel great, but but even that greatness is going to be different than the other time it felt great. And so, yeah, I like that. I feel like Dharma training really allows me to be just curious, right, about whatever shows up. And then that's just so much more interesting to engage with life that way.
So much better. It's so much
Yeah.
better. Couldn't agree more. We can just be curious little monkeys.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. And that's so funny because that Lama was saying that this weekend. We're kind of we're chimpanzees, you know,
Yeah,
we're just trying to figure out how to do this.
that's right. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Little right? Like it's just
Exactly.
happening, right? Yeah, let's be friends with it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man. Well, speaking of something which can really contribute to a monkey mind,
Ooh.
we've got our discussion topic for the night, which is, how to engage mindfully with the news and social media. Um, I feel like I am someone who can get really sucked in. How about you, Daniel?
I used to.
Yeah, yeah. What were some of your hooks?
Well, some of my hooks are primarily like great injustices. I really like those. Those really catch my attention. When things, like when sort of my idea about the way the world is, sort of like I don't know, I have a cynical sort of view of the world and the people in it. Everybody's out to get their whatever. Everybody's just out for themselves, and like it goes all the way up and down. Like their power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and those kind of just that sort of thinking. And then I see the news and it corroborates my worldview, and when that happens I get this like real special feeling of like, that's right, I know how it is. I know how it is, and the news is telling me that that's true. And so like I get a real strong like a juiced up, right, when I see that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it makes me happy, not at all. It's not a blissful state, but it's one that sort of feels good because it solidifies something, right, in me that makes permanent something in me, that I'm like, I know something, right? Everybody else is just going along for the ride, is so ignorant, so stupid, right? But I'm smart because I can see through all of it.
Yeah.
And when I see the news, boy, I get to see how smart I am. It's like that kind of a trip for me usually.
Yeah.
And then there's another component. I have this sort of like magical fantasy sort of aspect to me, and like I love getting into like new technologies and new discoveries, in science and whatnot, and imagining all the amazing things to come, and marveling at the world around us and that kind of thing. That's another sort of hook for me.
That one's kind of sweet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but I mean, it also comes with sort of this like, how am I going to use it?
Sure. Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
what does this mean for
Totally.
me, right? Like, oh, new stem cell research, oh great, I get to live forever, or whatever, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
new artificial intelligence algorithms, great, how can I use this in my business to dominate everybody else, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Yeah, like there's still me, there's a lot of me in when I'm watching or listening to or reading the news. There's a lot of that in there.
Oh
What about you? What
yeah.
are your hooks? I'm curious. Inquiring
Oh
minds
gosh.
want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the first one you shared, like the big injustices, that's a huge one for me. Um, yeah, anytime there's like police brutality or big protests happening, I'm wanting to be out there like the second that things happen. And I mean, it's such a strong hook for me that it really would get me out into the streets, which I don't think is a problem. I don't think it's a bad thing. But where it becomes a problem for me is when it does become about me, kind of like what you're saying, where it's like I am feeling so much suffering by seeing the suffering of other people. And I have to do something about it. I have to fix it. I have to be one of the ones to go out there and do it. And so it becomes this kind of like, yeah, it's just, it fluffs the ego in a way. And also, yeah, feels like it does this thing where anger can feel in the moment really empowering, where it's like, now I can do something about it because I'm angry. Which, when I really think about it, I don't think is the case. I think that actually really thoughtful, uh, long-term engagement with some of these issues is actually the most effective strategy. But yeah, so news around injustice. I mean, today, like the news around the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, where it's just like your heartstrings just get so tugged and pulled. And I was listening to NPR, and NPR does a really wonderful job of just really getting you in your emotions. They were doing these interviews with one-on-one with people who had lost family members and were there on the ground living outside in freezing weather now that they lost their homes. And there's just this way that I can get kind of hooked to that, where I'm wanting to, like, every time I get in the car, I'm turning on the radio again because I want to get in there. I want to know what it feels like. It's like this kind of there's an empathy there, but there's also like, it's like a self-serving, like, oh, I feel just like so like open and sad now. Like there's a way that yeah, maybe it helps me feel connected or something like that. But if I stay there too long and hear every single detail, which is sometimes what I do, it's really overwhelming and it's not helping anyone.
No.
So I do have that tendency to want to get into that, like, very granular, like what's happening on the ground every single moment. I have to have the update,
It's
and I don't think
interesting
that's
that
helpful.
that component right there. I think it's interesting because it's almost like, so for me, one of the sort of hooks is the newness of the news itself, like fresh information.
Sure,
Right.
yeah.
So it's not necessarily like a type of information, although if it's something really bad, then it's like, it's better in a way, right? Like, so my point is like, my news source for a long time, my primary news source, has actually been Reddit, right? The website Reddit. And it works in the sense that a lot of times things hit it faster than any news outlet, right? Like there's oftentimes, somebody who's actually on the scene, who's, personally there and is transcribing what's happening. And there's people like relating what's going on. And it's like, as soon as any kind of news hits, there's all kinds of sort of, opinions and thoughts and action items, you name it, that are going on. And when I was really sort of hooked on that aspect of it, I mean, I could refresh that thing every minute, like I mean, maybe even every more than that, just sitting there, just like, what's new? Oh, a new school shooting. Whoa, what's that mean? Right. Oh, wow. An earthquake. Whoa, and there's a lot going on around the world at any given time. So it's really easy to be constantly getting all this new information. Right. And it seems so vital, so important, so something, so that the freshness of it, there's that component of it that I don't think, it wasn't here when we got a daily newspaper, right? Like now you can, like, it's to the tip of your fingers. You can even subscribe to getting your phone buzzing every time there's a new anything that happens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's just that bombardment, and where I can feel like my body responding, like my adrenal response, where
Yeah.
I'm like ready, I'm like and that's not a healthy state to put ourselves in throughout the day. And
No.
and yeah, speaking of like how we have such immediate access, through our phones. There's also the, the change in how there's now a 24-hour news cycle on,
Yeah.
like, on the major channels. And so it's like they have to get really kind of nitty gritty, and and so what ends up happening is that they'll do these stories that are really just gossip. Like it'll be gossip between senators or congressmen and whatnot. And it's like, do we really need to know all of
Yeah.
that
Oh,
petty bullshit?
oh my God, Jack. My other sort of news outlet, so like to me, the other sort of source that I use is like it's just a feed from Google, right? So like Google News, where it's sort of
Yep.
it's all an aggregate of all the different news sites and stuff like that. And it's amazing to me how much little trivial, really nothing items, like stuff that isn't even real, it's just conjecture or whatever. Some
Right.
person has a brain fart and all of a sudden there's an article about it and there's opinion pieces about it, and or somebody wears a certain piece of clothing and it means something, and there's all this stuff that happens, right? And you know what got me, the reason I brought up Google News is this. So one of the reasons I like it is because I can, like a lot of people, we can sort of create our own news stream, right? Like the news gets served up like stuff that's actually more appealing to us. So like I get
Right.
information about the things that are interesting to me or they think that I'm going to read. But get this. Okay, so that's one of the features of this tool, right? Is that you can go in and tweak it to like show me more of this or show me less of that, and don't show me information from that source, but do show it to
Mm.
me from this other source, right? So I'm like, I get some control over my sources and what's being displayed. Get this, there are only 2 sections in the feed that you can't modify.
Hmm.
It's
What are they?
celebrity news and sports.
Really?
You can't remove them. You can't. There's nothing you could do about it. It's there. I had to download an extension. I had to download a browser extension to not show that shit to me, right? But
Oh,
because they want us to see it, like it's important, right? It's really
yeah.
important for some reason to somebody. It's not important to me for some reason, but it's really important to other people, right? So much so that they're the only 2 sections that cannot be removed. They have to.
Wow. That is fascinating. And, I think it's such a good, time to to bring in the Dharma here, right? Because
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
that's where, that's where I can get like so wrapped up in like this world sucks. Like all we care about is sports and celebrities. But what's so important as we engage with media and whatnot is to take a conscious approach, an intentional approach. And I think what's happening there, we can say, um, what is it that's driving this? This kind of like obsession with maybe, uh, I don't know, celebrities thinking about like what other people have, and really gawking at that, wanting their wealth, wanting their fame, and being kind of like grossly obsessed with that. And maybe even imagining ourselves. I know that's, when I was younger, I was kind of interested in that stuff too. And just like envisioning myself as this kind of like celebrity, and so it's almost like we can we can project our, those really like deeply attachment desires on these people who are not actually happy. They're not happy. Like being a celebrity is really, really devastating and like challenging life. I mean, sure, they have, everything materially that they want, but regardless, yeah, it's like we can take these little nuggets from our culture and say, what's happening here? And, why do we value celebrities and sports so much? Or why are there, these massive like media companies and corporations that want to push this to us? Why do they want us to be just seeing that, and I don't necessarily have an answer, but I think that, if we intentionally use, bring those things to the Dharma, then we're going to see a lot more. And we're probably going to be, like we were saying earlier, a lot more curious rather than just like pissed and frustrated and done with everything, which is my tendency.
Yeah, man. Well, I have some pet theories about why things are the way they are, but they're probably not worth going into. That's maybe a totally different podcast. Uh, but I did actually get so I recognized what this this cycle, this sort of what it was doing to me. Like the constant sort of looking for new information and getting sort of obsessed with it. And I saw, I also saw what was happening with other people in my life that, who maybe subscribe to different feeds, right? And the news that they're getting and the interpretation and opinions that they're receiving are different than the ones that I sort of steer myself towards, right? And I saw, like effects that I really didn't like. Like it just disturbed me. Like just a lot of changes in people's personalities and opinions and beliefs that they thought were their own, but just seemed to me to be, hook, line, and sinker exactly what was written and scripted by the corporations that were creating the news that they were consuming. And I don't think that I don't think anybody who consumes news nowadays actually is free from that, right? And so my response is sort of was a natural one. And I know that this is something that from a non-Dharma perspective, just from psychological health and stress management stuff, some of the advice that's given and the thing that I did was sort of like a news fast. Like, no, I'm just not gonna, just no, I'm not gonna listen to any of it, right? Like if I need to know, then it's going to be something that's happening in my immediate environment and I'll find out if I need it. And otherwise, I don't need to know if there's a tsunami happening on the other side of the world. I don't need to know about whatever's happening in politics or celebrity news or any of that stuff. I don't need it. I don't want it. And so just turn off completely. And it was helpful. I did notice a reduction in stress. My mind was less cluttered. There's all kinds of things that happened as a result of that. But I don't think it's skillful. I don't think that I think that the news has a place in our society, right? I think that information about what's happening in the world around us and what's happening in the lives of those people around us as well, right? Like other people who are still consuming a lot of news. I think it's sort of important to be aware of that, but there's a way to strike a balance, right? It's not feast or famine. It doesn't have to be this sort of extreme, like, oh, I'm constantly hitting the refresh button and addicted to the news and totally getting outraged at every little thing and, telling everybody all my opinions that I learned from whatever news source I got versus complete abstinence, right? Like complete, just like, I'm not even gonna, I won't subscribe to any of it. I won't look at any of it. I'm not gonna think about any of it. I think that there's a middle way. What do you think?
I think so too. Yeah, I definitely think so. And I've also noticed those kind of polarities in myself as well. And I think there is a time and a place for taking a total break. And I have done that, especially after events where I felt myself so strongly impacted and that kind of like obsessional quality, it tends to happen after like big national tragedies like the Uvalde massacre. That one really impacted me, and so much that I was having like kind of dreams and thinking about it throughout the day. And I was reading these kind of firsthand accounts of people who were there and really getting into the trauma of it. And that's not what I need to know. And so I already know that that's happening, right? I don't need to know the nitty gritty details. And so I did take a break. I think I took like a week off of the news, and that was really helpful for me. Just to say, I'm done for right now. And I life is still moving along for all of us, and I just need to engage with my life right here. But yeah, I think you know, you're right that there is a place for it. And I think there's a way that each one of us might need to engage with it differently. And maybe that's based on what we do for work, or what our, you know, kind of our roles are, and who we interact with, and what's useful, right? Like what's useful for us to know.
Yeah.
For example, like this week I read an article on, you know, the root causes of homelessness. And it really kind of revved my engine, because, you know, I work with a lot of people who are experiencing, or, you know, coming up to potential homelessness. And what's often the scapegoat is people's mental health or substance use challenges.
Yeah.
And this article was really arguing and providing a lot of proof for the fact that actually, while those things, mental health and substance use challenges, can make those people more vulnerable to homelessness, what actually is the real root problem is, you know, no access to affordable housing. So anyways, I was just feeling like really revved about that yeah, that like this is the problem, you know. And I was being very mindful too while I was reading it. I was kind of proud of myself. I was like, I wasn't getting pulled, like super tugged. Like usually what'll happen is like I'll read something like that and I'm just like, damn it, you know, like damn it, why is the world this way, you know? But I think now that I have like a better understanding of samsara, right? And that, you know, samsara is this kind of, it's miserable, right? We live in a world that's miserable. And so when something miserable is happening, it's like, okay, yeah, this is samsara. And there are things that we can do about it. You know, I watched this talk given by Thupten Chodron, I think it was in like 2019, and she was talking about like engaging with the news in a way that's more mindful. And she really emphasized like, okay, it's not just that you look at it with a dharma lens and say, okay, yeah, that's samsara. You speak up about it too. And so that's actually what I did today. It was so cool. I was
Cool.
yeah, I'll tell you, I was thinking about it like earlier in the day, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna look up and see if there's like any like advocacy opportunities here in Washington. And turns out it's so funny. Today was I forget the name of the group, but it was like Washington Tenants like Housing Advocacy Day at the state capitol. And so I actually attended a Zoom session with my representative, and I was the only one there.
What?
And I got to,
Cool.
yeah, I got to talk to my representative and share, you know, why it's so important that we pass these bills that are going to reduce, like, you know, rent gouging, and like create more affordable housing, and how specifically that tied into my role as, you know, someone who works in mental health. And it felt like, oh, that's okay, that's such a useful way to use the news, right? It's like, okay, something kind of lit my fire a little bit. And it's also something that I really have a lot of connection to in my everyday life. Why not, you know, try and say something about it, do something about it?
Yeah.
And so it felt really good. It felt just like what you were saying about, you know, being a little bit more skillful, like because I know that when I engage with that type of material, I just have so much energy around it. I feel so passionate, and so if I just leave that inside of me, you know, that's kind of it's just a toxic thing. And so, and this is just, you know, I'm speaking like psychologically, I was able to use that to transform that energy. And maybe that's even not just psychological, but like tantra speak, where we kind of transform our energies that we're experiencing, and make them into this more kind of useful energy and helpful energy. And so it felt good. It was like, okay, that's
Damn, Jack.
that's
Nice work. I'm
it.
proud of you. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
could I couldn't help but think that while you were talking that, you know, two sort of different ways of approaching the news, or like in one case when it's this this addictive, whatever you want to call it, all the stuff that we already described. It's a collapsed, it's a short, narrow view, right? Like we get really hyper focused on whatever it is, and we kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. But then when we're able to sort of approach it mindfully, like you were saying, you're not so closed, you're not so collapsed, you're more open, right? And so that openness actually allows you some space to move, to do something about it, right? Like either internally, even just working on your own perspective, your own mindset, or in your case, actually, doing something by engaging with other people around the topic. And so like, I think that that's really cool, right? Like, yeah, there is room for it. There is something that you can do. And you brought up the talk by Tubden Chodron. You had sent me a link actually to it, and I watched it, listened to the whole thing, and it was really a fantastic talk. Highly recommended about how to watch the news mindfully. Really good stuff. And one of the things I really liked about what she was talking about was sort of what you pointed to when it comes to action, which is we can get this feeling, this some people call it like the depressed Buddhist sort of point of view, like, oh, yep, that's samsara, right? Like that's how it's all just sucky, and it's always going to be that way. It always has been that way, and there's nothing I can really do about it except maybe tweak my perspective, something like that, right? But Tubden Chodron wasn't like, I thought it was kind of cool. What she was talking about was like the ripple effect, right? And it's pretty easy to find examples of individuals throughout world history that have had a ripple effect, right? Either what we might construe as negative or as positive. And the thing is that if we do want to have some kind of a positive change, if we do want to have this sort of ripple effect, then it's only by having that sort of broader view, like you were talking, like the way that you approached it in this case, right? By not taking it, she mentions not taking it so personally. It's not personal. It's not about you, right? The news, nothing you read in the news, even if it feels targeted at you, right? Even if it feels like it's about you, it's not about you personally, right? And in those cases where it does feel super sort of like it strikes really close to home, maybe that's an indicator that there is actually room for you to move around it, that there might actually be something for you to do about it. But I kind of couldn't help but think about it in terms of, like this sort of like mandala effect, right? Like this idea that there's like we're all interconnected, right? And so like, we the news tends to sort of focus on the darker sort of aspects of reality, which we generally don't like. We generally want to avoid them in our own lives, but maybe there's some sort of interest in it in a bigger picture. And we might view ourselves as sort of beacons of light in a dark world or something like that. But it's both, right? Like, our point of view here within Buddhism is not to conquer the darkness with light, right? That's not the goal, right? It's to see it, to see the whole picture, the big picture, all of it, right? And it's only when we can really open up and see the big picture that we can flip on the light switch and notice how it has that effect, how you can join a Zoom call, talk to your representative. And yeah, maybe you didn't like overwhelmingly change their mind or make them go do something that's going to now all of a sudden change the entire Seattle area and give everybody homes and that kind of magical thinking. But maybe you planted a seed of thought. Maybe, you gave them something that allows them to talk, with other people and maybe convince a few other people, right? You don't know how your own actions can affect other people and how it can affect the entire freaking world, right? And so I thought that was one of the takeaways I thought, from that talk that I found really hopeful. Like, hey, wow, we can watch the news and then we can use that information that we glean from the news to actually make things better.
Yeah. And I think another thing that really stood out to me related to that was just how, if we really strongly have faith in the fact that all of this is interdependent, then we wouldn't feel despair around how we're just one person who can only act in so many ways and affect so many things. Because with that, true knowledge of interdependence, it's like we're really affecting everything all the time. We're everything around us. And yeah, so I really feel inspired by that. And it's something that I think I'm coming to as I get older too, where my engagement with the news when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, was very much about just fighting, right? Having an external enemy and fighting that enemy. And so, there were so many enemies in the news, and there are
Mm,
potentially so many now for me, right?
yeah.
But now as I get older and also, really grow in my understanding of the Dharma, it's like, there are no enemies. There's bad actions, right? There's really,
Totally.
really negative, horrible things that people do. But those actions, for one, are not permanent. And also, they don't define that individual. Um, and really, like, I really, really have faith now in Buddha nature, that all beings have Buddha nature. And so with that understanding, it's like, you see like these horrible actions that people do. And it's now I just think like what happened to that person, right? So that their Buddha nature was so covered up that they would be
Yeah.
able to do that, or feel compelled, feel like they had no other choice. There's so many things that lead people to do horrible things, right? um and so it's just it's a total shift in perspective. But I think if we can mindfully, if we can decide like, okay, today I'm gonna look at the news, right? Which I'm gonna try and do this as I move forward. But okay, I'm gonna look at the news. I know that some things might be triggering, but I'm gonna start with just the premise that all beings have Buddha nature. And then as I read some headlines, maybe not even read the whole article. I'm just gonna read some headlines, see what's going on, and just try and assess, like, how did people get away from their Buddha nature? How did their Buddha nature get covered? And that feels like a very inspiring way for me to check out the news, because yeah, it's just remembering that we don't have to go into despair. There are things that can be done, and eventually we'll all become Buddhists with a lot of effort and a lot of time, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, contrary, actually, so yeah, the news can cause despair, but when we look at it from a certain point of view, those strong polarities can sort of invoke a sense of humor as well. We can sort of
Hmm.
laugh at the absurdity of all of it. And beyond that though, something that you were talking about, like related to like our shared Buddha nature, um, the part that covers up our Buddha nature, that part is shared as well. And I think that
Totally.
that's one way of looking at the news that's been really helpful to me, is that these bad actors, these action people who cause bad actions, um, when I really stop to think about all of them, I haven't found anybody yet that's exempt. I can see that whatever, like what I think might be what clouds them from their Buddha nature, I can sense that in me too. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I can see, like I sort of like, all the news around Putin and how he's this evil genocidal maniac and whatever. There's all this sort of painting a picture of this guy, or Trump or whoever, fill in
Yeah.
the blank. It doesn't really matter who it is, but like I can see, first there's like a part of me that's sort of like what happened to that? Like they used to be like a little kid, right? They were
Yeah.
some, right? Like they had a mommy and a daddy or whatever, right? And like what happened? Like how did it come to this, right? And I can imagine, and I know that it's just my imagination, right? I don't know any of the facts or anything, but when I look at it, I allow my imagination to sort of take hold. Like how did it come to be? I can see
Oh
how
yeah.
trauma and ignorance and all this sort of anger and delusion and desire. Oh my God, the desire, right?
Right.
Like I can see how, like how maybe like a desire for things or for fame or whatever it might be, how that would arise, and then how that might create really strong fear, right? And a need to act
Right.
defensively or, aggressively, or, to engage in harm against one's perceived enemies, all of that stuff. And people feeling maybe they're pushed into a corner and have no other
Right.
choice, right? Like I'm like, man, like we're not that different. Like
We're
yeah,
not
our
that
life
different.
situations
Yeah.
are different, but all that crap, all that stuff that's making you be, like not you be, but making you, behave in these ways that really are harmful towards others and even towards yourself. Like that's me too. I got
Yeah.
that too.
Totally. Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah,
I'm just glad I
that's
don't have like armies and untold wealth at my disposal.
I
I
know,
could
gosh,
I could really
we
screw this place up,
we'd be monsters. Yeah.
No,
Well,
totally, man.
that's yeah, I am that was another talk that Chupen Chojic gave that I found really helpful. Where it's kind of to meditate on, different people's causes and conditions that have, helped shape their personalities and the way they engage with the world. And basically the come away is that, yeah, if I had those same causes and conditions, of course I'd be like that. Like you imagine, someone like Trump being raised in, total wealth, having everything you want, and also a father who maybe kind of abusive, not very, emotional. Yeah, you're going to become a narcissist.
Yeah.
You're just that's what happens. Um, and I think that there's ways that I definitely see the seeds of narcissism in myself. And I was lucky that, I was shown Siddhartha at a young age. There's ways that I've been really fortunate. But yeah, I totally appreciate that you said that it's like, um, yeah, if I was raised in that kind of wealth and luxury and that it would happen. It's really hard to avoid. Um, so yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, exactly that. Like our humanity is shared, right? Like the light and the dark, the good, the bad, all of that stuff. Like we want to think that we're somehow exempt. We're somehow special. That the I can be extracted from all that mess, right? Yeah,
Right.
all that's all messed up. It's they're bad. Oh, they don't understand, and I somehow I'm special and I'm different and I'm good. Nope. No, and that's the good news and the bad news, right? It feels like it goes both ways, but like it's really good.
Yeah.
It's actually really good news. It's great, right? Like at the end of the day, that we can sort of relax a little bit around this stuff. Like I'm not saying that we sit on our laurels and don't do anything, as you pointed out. Action, we have a right, we have an obligation to act in this
Right.
world, right? So it's not about not doing anything, but like we can relax a little bit, we can broaden our mindset a little bit, right? And,
Yeah.
yeah, just have a bigger viewpoint of the whole thing. I oftentimes think about it like when I start to really get into like good and bad people. I think about that poem by Thich Nhat Hanh called "Call Me by My True Names." Have I already read that on
Mm.
here? Have I already read that on
I'd
here?
I'd love to hear it again if you have.
Okay, can
Yeah.
I? We have a few
Yeah.
minutes. I love this because I just like it really just like sometimes it even like brings me to tears, like just thinking about like this, like, yeah, it seems there's something so rotten about all of this and all that rottenness, like it's right here. It's part of me too, right?
Mm.
There's something gorgeous about it. So here we go.
Hmm.
Okay. This is a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh called Please Call Me by My True Names. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I'm arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am a frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I'm the 12-year-old girl refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. I am also the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I'm a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true name so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names so I can wake up and the door of my heart could be left open, the door of compassion.
Thank you so much for sharing that poem,
Yeah.
Daniel.
It's a
Feel
good
like
way to
that
approach the news, don't you think? Right? Like there it is.
Yes, there it is.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Everything we see, it's right here.
It's right here. All of
Yeah.
it. Right? Let's open our eyes. Let's be awake to it. Right?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
not escape it either. Let's be a part of it.
Mm.
Right? Just
Mhm.
jump right in.
Yeah. Yeah. We've all got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, it has been really beautiful evening. I feel yeah, I think just even more ready to engage, right, with our world. And Lama says a lot, you know, that Dharma practice is about falling in love with our world again. You
I
know,
want to do that.
not refusing it, not refusing it. Yeah, falling in love again. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. There's a saying, I saw it once. I didn't bring it up, but I saw once a bumper sticker that said, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. Right. And I laughed. I thought it was pretty funny at the time, you know, because there seemed to be some truth in it. But in a similar vein, right? If you're not absolutely madly in love with this world, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Let it rile us up in the way that we get to see that, you know, we have to get out of this together, you know, and it's only through our connection to each other that we can. So thank you, Daniel, so much.
I'm grateful to be connected to you, Jack.
So grateful to be connected to you, and to all of you watching and listening. Many thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.